The sky outside was gray as Wendy sat across from Elaine's immaculate desk, watching her boss flip through the promotion application with practiced disinterest. 5 years of sacrificed weekends, missed family dinners, and endless overtime hours condensed into a 20-page portfolio that Elaine barely glanced at before setting it aside. "I appreciate your enthusiasm," Elaine said, adjusting her designer glasses, "but I've reviewed your application thoroughly, and while your work has been adequate, I don't believe you're qualified for senior management, perhaps in another year or two." Adequate. The word dropped between them like a stone. "I maintained the department's highest client satisfaction ratings. I personally saved the Lawford account when everyone else had written it off. I haven't taken a full weekend off in 3 years." But I only smiled and nodded, the practiced expression I'd perfected in corporate America. "I understand. Thank you for the feedback. I'm glad we're on the same page," Elaine replied, already checking her watch. "The Ellison proposal needs your attention today. They've requested additional metrics before signing." As I gathered my things, Elaine was already typing an email, my career disappointment already forgotten. I walked past the corner office that should have been mine, with its window view and glass door where my name belonged. In the parking garage, I sat in my car and stared at my reflection in the rearview mirror. The woman looking back at me wasn't sad or even angry. She looked calculating. I started the engine and made 2 decisions that would change everything. I would cancel my upcoming vacation, and I would stop writing my daily operational guides. No one at the office knew it yet, but their perfect system was about to crash without its invisible support beam. Before I tell you what happened next, you might be wondering why so many people feel stuck in careers where they're undervalued. If my story resonates with you, make sure to like and subscribe. I share a new career strategy every week that might just change your professional life. Now, back to what happened after that meeting. My name is Amelia Carlton, and until that meeting, I was the most reliable employee at Meridian Solutions. Not the most visible or the highest paid, but the one who kept everything running while others took credit. I'm methodical by nature, with an almost photographic memory for systems and processes. Growing up with 4 younger siblings taught me to solve problems before they exploded, a skill that transferred perfectly to corporate life. When I joined the company 5 years ago, I'd inherited a catastrophic mess. The previous team leader had departed abruptly after a disagreement with management, taking all procedural knowledge with them. No documentation, no transition notes, not even passwords to critical systems. The department was in chaos. Clients were threatening to leave, and nobody knew how to fix it. I spent 3 months reverse engineering every workflow, staying until midnight decoding spreadsheets and reconstructing client histories. I created detailed guides for every process, color-coded, indexed, and meticulously organized. My boss Elaine never bothered to learn these systems. Why would she when I handled everything so smoothly? "You're a natural problem solver," she'd say during my performance reviews, always followed by a modest raise that never matched my contributions. The company had recently landed a contract with Ellison Enterprises, a major client worth millions in annual revenue. I'd built that relationship from nothing, staying late to accommodate their overseas time zone and learning their industry thoroughly. Elaine had attended exactly 3 meetings, mostly to claim credit during quarterly executive reviews. Each morning, I arrived at 7:30 in the morning to prepare briefing notes for Elaine before her 9 o'clock management meeting. Each evening, I sent comprehensive updates on all active projects. In between, I put out fires before anyone noticed smoke. The morning after my rejected promotion, something changed inside me. I arrived at exactly 9 o'clock. Not 7:30, not 8:45, exactly 9. I drafted no briefing notes. I answered emails directly addressed to me and ignored the rest. When a crisis erupted with a supplier, I directed it to the appropriate department instead of solving it myself as usual. By lunch, 3 people had stopped by my desk with confused expressions. "Amelia, did you see the thread about the Lawford scheduling conflict?" asked Peter from accounts. "Yes," I replied, continuing to type. He waited for more, shifting awkwardly when nothing came. "So, can you fix it like you usually do?" I looked up from my screen. That's actually under procurement scope. I forwarded it to Diane. His eyebrows rose slightly. But you always handle these things. I've been advised to focus more on my assigned responsibilities, I said with a small smile. I'm trying to demonstrate that I understand my proper place in the organization. By 5 p.m., I packed up my belongings and left. No extra hours, no taking work home. On my drive, I canceled the cabin reservation for my upcoming vacation, the first real break I'd planned in 3 years. Instead, I would be present for the system's inevitable collapse. That evening, my phone buzzed with work notifications. I silenced it and spent time with my daughter Elena, baking chocolate chip cookies, something I hadn't done in months. As we laughed over misshapen cookie dough, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. Mom, why are you home early? Elena asked, licking batter from a spoon. I paused, considering how to explain corporate politics to a 10-year-old. I decided my time was valuable, honey, and I wanted to spend more of it with you. She beamed. Can we do this tomorrow too? Absolutely, I promised, ignoring the phone vibrating insistently on the counter. By the next morning, cracks were showing at work. The Ellison client had requested urgent changes to their implementation plan, changes only I understood how to make. Elaine attempted to lead the response team but quickly became overwhelmed without my usual detailed briefings. Where are the process notes for the Ellison customizations? She demanded, appearing at my desk at 10:30. They're in the shared drive, I replied pleasantly. Under client implementations. I mentioned it in last month's department meeting. There are hundreds of files there. Which one specifically? I pulled up the folder on my screen. The master document is called Ellison Enterprise Integration, Complete Process Documentation. It's organized by module with tabbed sections. Elaine stared at the 200-page document with barely concealed horror. Can you just handle this directly? The client is waiting. I'd be happy to, I replied, but I have the quarterly compliance review this afternoon. I can get to Ellison first thing tomorrow morning. Her face tightened. This can't wait until tomorrow. I understand. Would you like me to reschedule the compliance review? It's due to the regulators by end of day. She left without answering, her heels clicking aggressively down the hallway. That evening, I turned off all work notifications and took Elena to the park. My personal phone remained silent beside me on the bench as I watched her on the swings, her laughter carrying across the playground. For the first time in years, I was fully present in my personal life. When we returned home, I checked my work phone once. 79 missed calls from various work numbers. Voicemails ranged from confused to desperate to furious. The Ellison team was threatening to pull their contract. 3 systems had developed unexpected issues, all documented in my guides, which nobody had bothered to read. The quarterly compliance report due to regulators was still incomplete. I set the phone down and slept better than I had in years. The next morning, I arrived at precisely 9 o'clock in the morning again. The office atmosphere had transformed overnight. Harried colleagues rushed between meeting rooms. Elaine was visible through her office glass, gesturing frantically on a video call. The regional director's assistant was pacing by the elevator banks. I settled at my desk and methodically organized my tasks for the day. Where have you been? Peter hissed, appearing beside me with wild eyes. Everything's falling apart. Elaine's been trying to reach you since yesterday afternoon. I left at 5 o'clock, I replied calmly. My work hours are 9 o'clock to 5 o'clock, as specified in my contract. But the Ellison crisis, what about it? His mouth opened and closed. They're threatening to walk. Nobody can figure out how to implement the changes they need. I nodded thoughtfully. That process requires special handling. It's all documented in the guide I created last year. Nobody can make sense of your documentation without you explaining it, he almost shouted. Before I could respond, Elaine's assistant appeared. Amelia, emergency meeting in the conference room, now. I gathered a notebook and pen, walking unhurriedly to the conference room where Elaine sat with the regional director, Byron Wallace. Their faces were grim, folders spread across the table. Amelia, Byron said, relief evident in his voice. Thank goodness. We need your help with this Ellison situation immediately. I sat down and placed my notebook on the table. Of course, how can I assist? Elaine's face was tight with controlled fury. Let's cut to the chase. What will it take for you to fix this? The promotion? It's yours. I tilted my head slightly. That's a generous offer, but I've been contacted by a competitor. They've offered me a senior management position with a substantial salary increase. Apparently, they believe I'm qualified. The room went silent. Byron's eyes widened while Elaine's narrowed dangerously. You're leaving? Byron asked. When? I haven't accepted their offer yet, I replied. I was taking time to consider my options. Name your price, Byron said immediately. Whatever they're offering, we'll match it. I smiled politely. It's not just about compensation. It's about recognition, respect, and opportunity. The Ellison client specifically asked for you by name, Elaine interjected. You can't possibly leave now. Interesting, I said. So did 4 others in the past month. I reached into my bag and placed a folder on the table. Here's my 2 weeks' notice. I'll help with the transition as my contract requires. Elaine reached for the folder, but Byron was faster. He opened it, scanned the contents, then closed it decisively. This won't be necessary, he said firmly. Amelia, I'd like to speak with you privately in my office. As I stood to follow him, Elaine remained seated, her knuckles white against the polished table. The company's response to my resignation was about to reveal exactly how much they had undervalued me all along, and what they were willing to do to keep me now that they understood my true worth. I followed Byron to his corner office, aware of the curious glances from colleagues as we passed. His space was minimalist, but impressive. Awards and industry recognitions lined one wall, while floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city. He gestured for me to sit in the chair across from his desk. I've been watching your contributions for some time, Byron said, folding his hands on his desk, though apparently not closely enough. I remained silent, letting him continue. The situation with Elaine concerns me, he admitted. This is the first I'm hearing about your promotion being denied. Why didn't you come to me directly? Chain of command, I replied simply. Elaine is my supervisor. Going over her head would have been inappropriate. He nodded slowly. Admirable, but perhaps misguided in this case. Tell me honestly, what would it take to keep you here? I considered my words carefully. Recognition of my actual contributions, appropriate compensation, and a position where I can implement the strategies I've developed instead of just executing someone else's vision. Byron studied me for a long moment. I'm creating a new position, Director of Operational Systems, reporting directly to me. Double your current salary, full remote flexibility 3 days a week, and authority over departmental workflow design. The position is yours if you want it. I didn't respond immediately, which seemed to surprise him. Is that not sufficient? He asked. It's very generous, I acknowledged, but I need to be clear about something. I'm not using a competing offer as leverage. There really is another company waiting for my decision. Byron leaned back. What can they offer that we can't match or exceed? A fresh start, I said honestly. No history of being overlooked. No colleagues who see me as support staff rather than leadership. Fair point, he conceded. But consider this. You've built systems here that you understand intimately. You've cultivated client relationships that trust you. Starting over means rebuilding all of that from scratch. He was right, of course. 5 years of institutional knowledge wasn't easily replaced, but neither was the feeling of being consistently undervalued. I'll need some time to consider, I said finally. Of course, take the weekend, but I need an answer by Monday morning. He stood, signaling the end of our meeting. And Amelia? I'd appreciate if you could help stabilize the Ellison situation before you make any final decisions. I nodded. I'll handle Ellison personally today. When I returned to my desk, an email from Byron was already waiting, outlining the new position offer in writing. The salary figure made me blink twice. It was more than double what I currently earned. The job description could have been written specifically for my skill set. I was gathering materials for the Ellison call when Elaine appeared beside my desk, her expression carefully neutral. We need to talk, she said quietly. Not here. Lunch? I have the Ellison call at noon, I replied. After that then, my office at 2. I nodded, already turning my attention to the crisis at hand. The Ellison team was frustrated but relieved when I joined the call. Their demands were reasonable. They needed customizations that would normally take weeks implemented within days. I walked them through a phased approach that would prioritize their most critical needs while building toward their complete vision. "This is exactly why we wanted to work with your company," their director said. "You understand our business needs, not just technical specifications." After the call, I documented the solution in clear steps and sent it to the implementation team with explicit instructions. Normally, I would have handled every aspect myself, but today I delegated appropriately, making myself available for questions but not taking ownership of the execution. At 2 o'clock, I knocked on Elaine's door. She looked different, smaller somehow, with dark circles under her eyes, suggesting a sleepless night. "Close the door," she said, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. "I understand Byron offered you a new position." "He did," I confirmed. She nodded slowly. "I won't pretend to be happy about it, but I understand why he did it. You're valuable to the company." I waited, sensing there was more. "I owe you an apology," she continued, the words seemingly difficult for her. "I've relied on your competence without appropriately acknowledging it or rewarding it." "May I ask you something?" I said, genuinely curious. "When you said I wasn't qualified for senior management, what specifically did you think I was lacking?" Elaine shifted uncomfortably. "You've always been more technical, the behind-the-scenes problem solver. Senior management requires visibility, presence, political savvy. In other words, I do the work while others take the spotlight." She had the grace to look embarrassed. "That's oversimplifying." "Is it?" I asked. "The Ellison contract who presented the winning strategy to the executive team." "I did, but based on the proposal I developed, the client retention initiative last quarter that saved 4 major accounts, who received the leadership award? That was a team effort. A team I led, coordinated, and created all materials for." I leaned forward slightly. "I'm not lacking qualifications, Elaine. I've simply allowed others to stand on my shoulders while remaining invisible." The silence between us stretched uncomfortably. "Are you taking Byron's offer?" she finally asked. "I haven't decided. If you stay," she said carefully, "things will be different between us." "Yes," I agreed. "They will." The weekend gave me time to think clearly away from office politics. I took Elena to the Science Museum on Saturday, something I'd been promising for months, but never found time for. On Sunday, I called my sister for advice. "What does your gut tell you?" she asked after I explained the situation. "That I've outgrown the box they put me in," I replied. "But I'm not sure if Byron's offer changes that or just makes the box more comfortable." "Would you be reporting to Elaine in this new role?" "No, directly to Byron." "And what happens to Elaine?" It was a good question. Byron didn't say specifically, but reading between the lines, I think her position is being reconsidered. My sister was quiet for a moment. "So your options are to take a fresh start elsewhere, or accept a promotion that might result in your former boss being demoted?" Put that way, the choice felt different. "I don't want revenge against Elaine," I said slowly. "I just want recognition for my work." "Are you sure about that?" my sister challenged. "Because from what you've told me, part of you would enjoy seeing her face the consequences of underestimating you." Her words hit uncomfortably close to home. Was that what I wanted? To see Elaine humbled? To watch her realize how much she'd depended on me while simultaneously dismissing my contributions? By Monday morning, I had made my decision. I arrived early, 7:30 a.m., my old starting time, and went directly to Byron's office. His assistant wasn't at her desk yet, but his door was open. "You're early," he noted, looking up from his computer. "I wanted to give you my answer before the day gets busy," I explained, taking the seat across from him. "And? I'm accepting your offer with 2 conditions." His eyebrows rose slightly. "I'm listening." "First, I want to build my own team. Full hiring authority for 3 positions that I believe are essential." Byron nodded. "Reasonable? And the second?" "Elaine remains in her current position." This clearly surprised him. "After how she treated you? Why?" Because replacing her doesn't solve the structural problems in how the department functions, and because I don't want my first leadership act to be perceived as revenge. He studied me with new interest. That's unexpected and politically astute. I've learned a few things watching from the sidelines, I replied. Very well. Elaine stays, though her department will now coordinate through your office for operational matters. Thank you. No, Amelia, Byron said, extending his hand. Thank you for staying. The announcement will go out this morning. I suggest you prepare for quite a bit of reaction. He wasn't wrong. The company-wide email went out at 10 a.m., announcing my new position and outlining my expanded responsibilities. My inbox immediately flooded with congratulations, questions, and meeting requests. Peter stopped by my desk, looking somewhat sheepish. So, you'll be my boss now? Technically, yes, I confirmed. Is that going to be a problem? He shook his head quickly. No, it's great. You've always been the one who actually knows what's happening anyway. Throughout the day, colleagues who had barely acknowledged me previously suddenly found reasons to introduce themselves. Administrative assistants who had always been kind to me now smiled with a hint of conspiracy. They understood better than anyone how invisible work kept the company running. Elaine avoided me until late afternoon, when she appeared at my desk with a folder. The quarterly strategy document, she said stiffly. Since operational planning now falls under your purview, you'll need to present this at the executive meeting tomorrow. I accepted the folder. Thank you, I'll review it tonight. She turned to leave, then hesitated. For what it's worth, I didn't recommend against your promotion because I thought you were incapable. I did it because I couldn't afford to lose you from my team. It was perhaps the most honest thing she'd ever said to me. That's the fundamental problem, isn't it? I replied. Good managers develop their people even when it means letting them move on. She nodded once, sharply, and walked away. That evening, I stayed late reorganizing my workspace for my new role. Byron stopped by on his way out. Still here? I thought you'd be celebrating. I smiled. I'll celebrate this weekend. Right now, I'm planning. Planning what? How to make sure no one else in this company is overlooked the way I was. I handed him a document I'd been working on. This is my proposed structure for the new department, including training programs to identify internal talent and systematically develop it. He flipped through the pages, eyebrows rising. You developed all this today? No, I admitted. I've been refining it for about 2 years. I just never had the authority to implement it. Byron shook his head, looking impressed. Remind me never to underestimate you, Amelia. That's the plan, I replied with a smile. 3 months later, the transformation was well underway. My new team included a brilliant systems analyst who had been buried in IT support and a process developer who had been miscast as an administrative assistant. Together, we streamlined operations across 4 departments, reducing overtime by 40% while increasing productivity metrics. Elaine and I developed a professional working relationship. It wasn't friendly exactly, but it was respectful. She excelled at client-facing interactions, once freed from operational details she had never fully grasped. In an unexpected development, the division's employee satisfaction scores improved dramatically. The Ellison contract expanded to include 2 additional service lines, specifically requesting my new team's involvement in the implementation. Their CEO personally called Byron to commend the company's remarkable turnaround in operational excellence. On a Friday afternoon, 6 months after my non-promotion, I left the office at 5 p.m., a habit I had maintained despite my increased responsibilities. Elena was waiting when I got home, homework spread across the kitchen table. How was work, Mom? She asked, looking up from her math problems. Productive, I replied, setting down my laptop bag. The new training program launched today. 25 employees will get development opportunities they wouldn't have had before. Like you didn't get? Children see more than we realize. Yes, exactly like that. She considered this for a moment. That's a nice way to fix things. Instead of getting mad, you're making it better for other people. I smiled, recognizing the wisdom in her observation. Sometimes the best response to being undervalued isn't anger. It's demonstrating your true worth so clearly that it can never be questioned again. That evening, as Elena slept and I reviewed presentations for Monday's executive meeting, my phone buzzed with a text from Byron. Board approved your promotion to VP level, effective next month. Unanimous vote. Elaine actually gave the strongest recommendation. Congratulations. I set the phone down, a sense of satisfaction washing over me. This wasn't about winning or revenge. It was about finally being seen, truly seen, for what I had always been capable of doing. The corner office with my name on the door was nice, but it wasn't the victory. The victory was changing a system that had failed not just me, but countless others whose quiet competence went unrecognized. The victory was creating paths for others to rise without having to become invisible first. Sometimes the most powerful response to being underestimated isn't proving others wrong. It's creating a world where talent can no longer be ignored, no matter how quietly it performs. If you've ever felt invisible in your workplace, despite carrying more than your share, I hope my story gives you courage. The skills that make you indispensable are the same ones that qualify you for leadership. Don't wait for others to recognize your value. Demonstrate it so clearly that denying it becomes impossible. And if you found something valuable in this story, please like and subscribe for more strategies on transforming workplace dynamics. Remember, your worth isn't determined by others' inability to see it. It's defined by your impact, whether acknowledged or not. I stared at the locked front door, clutching the handmade sweaters I'd knitted for my grandchildren's birthday. Through the decorative glass panel, I could see Renee pointing at me, her mouth moving rapidly as she spoke to my son, Dominic. He nodded, his expression blank, then approached the door but didn't open it. "Mom," he said through the mail slot, "this isn't a good time. The twins are getting ready for their party." "I brought their presents," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I've been working on these sweaters for months." "You can leave them on the porch," Renee called from behind him. "But we need you to go now. The party guests will be here soon." I stood on their doorstep, confused. "I thought I was invited. It's their 5th birthday, Dominic. I'm their grandmother." Dominic looked over his shoulder at Renee, who was shaking her head firmly. "Mom, we've been noticing some things lately. You called Camden Caleb 3 times last visit. You forgot about Piper's strawberry allergy and almost gave her that fruit tart. That was one mistake, and I caught myself. You left the water running in the bathroom," Renee interjected, suddenly appearing beside my son. "You lost track of which twin was which at the park. You told the same story twice in one afternoon." My cheeks burned with humiliation as she listed my supposed failures. "The children need consistency and stability," she continued, her voice laced with artificial concern. "My parenting coach says confusion is harmful to developing minds. We think it's best if we pause the visits until you're more reliable." "More reliable?" I repeated. "I raised Dominic by myself after his father died. I never missed a school event." That was different, Mom," Dominic interrupted. "You were younger then." "I'm only 63. Renee checked her designer watch. "We really need to prepare for the party. I'll take those." She reached through the mail slot and snatched the gift bag from my hands. "The children will open them later. Can I at least say happy birthday to them?" I asked, my voice cracking despite my best efforts. "They're napping before the party," Renee lied. I could hear them giggling in the background. "It's better this way, Agnes. A clean break. You understand." The door closed completely. Through the glass, I watched as Renee dropped my carefully wrapped presents behind the entryway bench, out of sight, before turning away. I stood there for several minutes, my hands trembling. The birthday card I'd made still clutched in my fingers, decorated with hand-drawn mathematical formulas arranged in the shape of hearts, my special way of showing love. The twins had always delighted in our secret number language. As I walked down the driveway, I saw the caterers arriving with a cosmic adventure-themed cake, the astronomy theme I'd suggested months ago when Piper had shown interest in stars. Renee had dismissed the idea then as too educational, yet here it was. I paused at the mailbox, watching as neighbors arrived with brightly wrapped gifts. Nobody glanced my way. It was as if I'd already been erased from the family picture. That night, alone in my modest ranch house that I'd paid off years ago, I pulled out my financial records. The trusts I'd established for Camden and Piper shortly after their birth had grown to over $500,000 each. Renee had no idea. She'd never bothered to ask how a community college mathematics professor could afford to live debt-free and still give generous gifts to her grandchildren. 3 weeks later, the phone calls began. If you're enjoying this story of a grandmother's fight to see her beloved grandchildren, please like this video and subscribe to hear more emotional family stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Your support helps bring more content like this to life. My name is Agnes Weber. For 36 years, I taught mathematics at Lakeside Community College, helping hundreds of students understand the elegant language of numbers and probability. Numbers never lie. People, however, can be deceptive in endless ways. I was widowed at 40 when my husband Martin collapsed from an aneurysm while grading papers. One moment, we were planning a summer trip to the Grand Canyon. The next, I was a single mother with a 12-year-old son and a mortgage. Life pivoted with merciless speed. While grief nearly consumed me, I recognized that numbers could save us. I calculated household budgets with precision. I invested our modest insurance payout conservatively but strategically. I took summer teaching positions while Dominic was at camp. What began as survival evolved into passion. Financial planning became my second expertise. By the time Dominic met Renee during his final year of architecture school, I had built a portfolio that would have impressed most financial advisors. I'd also started a weekend consulting business, helping other widows navigate their financial futures. Renee came from what she called good stock, her words dripping with implications about her family's status. Her marketing degree led to a position at an advertising firm where she specialized in luxury brands. She wore her ambition like designer perfume, unmistakable and occasionally overwhelming. "Your mom is so quaint," she told Dominic at a dinner where I'd served homemade lasagna instead of ordering catering. Counting pennies at her age must be exhausting. Dominic laughed uncomfortably. "Mom's just careful with money." Renee spotted my coupon organizer on the counter and tapped it with a manicured finger. "Cute hobby. My mother has a personal shopper who handles all that tedious stuff." I smiled and served her a second helping of the garlic bread she'd been devouring. Different priorities, I suppose. When the twins were born, I fell in love instantly. Camden with his serious expressions, and Piper with her curious eyes studying everything. I established their trust the week after their birth, transferring investments I'd nurtured for decades. For 5 years, I cherished our time together. Tuesdays were Grandma's exploration days. We planted rainbow carrots in my backyard garden, made telescopes from cardboard tubes, created homemade Play-Doh in vibrant colors. Saturdays became wonder mornings, where we read books in the cozy nook I'd created in my spare bedroom, filled with pillows and twinkling lights. The twins called it our brain palace. I never discussed these financial provisions with Renee or Dominic. Martin had taught me that money conversations often revealed character, and something in Renee's dismissive glances at my modest lifestyle made me cautious. After being banned from the twins' birthday party, I tried reasoning. I sent emails explaining that occasional name mix-ups were just a grandmother's momentary slip, not cognitive decline. I left voicemails for Dominic, keeping my voice steady despite the ache in my chest. I mailed handwritten letters to the twins with simple math puzzles they loved solving. No responses came. 2 weeks after the birthday lockout, I spotted them at the farmer's market. Piper saw me first and broke away from Renee, running toward me with her arms outstretched. "Grandma, I got your letter. I solved the star problem." My heart soared as I knelt to embrace her, but Renee intercepted, grabbing Piper's arm. "We talked about this," she hissed to Piper. "Grandma isn't feeling well these days." "But I'm perfectly," I began. "Please don't confuse them." Renee cut me off, loud enough for nearby shoppers to hear. "The doctor said limited contact is best until your condition improves." "What doctor?" I asked, bewildered. "What condition?" Renee pulled both children away, leaning in to whisper, "This is exactly what we're concerned about, Agnes. These memory gaps. It's not safe for the children." As they walked away, Camden looked back at me, his little face crumpled in confusion. I stood frozen between stalls of fresh produce, humiliation washing over me, as strangers cast pitying glances my way. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table with my calculator, investment statements, and trust documents spread before me. The numbers comforted me as I made the hardest calculation of my life. The next morning, I called my attorney, Helena. "I need to modify the conditions of the children's trusts," I explained, my voice firmer than it had been in weeks. "What changes did you have in mind?" Helena asked. "Make the release of funds contingent upon regular contact between myself and the children throughout their youth, verified by you as trustee." minimum twice monthly meaningful visits, participation in family holidays, and 2 weeks each summer until they turn 18. Otherwise, the funds transfer to the college scholarship program I've supported. Helena was silent for a moment. Agnes, are you being denied access to your grandchildren? I explained the situation, my voice breaking only once. That's despicable, Helena said. I'll draw up the amendments immediately. And Agnes, document everything. 3 weeks passed. I donated the unopened birthday gifts to a children's hospital. I reapplied to teach another financial literacy course. I tended my garden where empty child-sized gardening gloves lay unused beside the tomato plants. Then my phone rang. The number displayed made my heart skip. Renee's cell phone. I let the phone ring 4 times before answering. Agnes? Renee's voice held an unfamiliar sweetness. I hope I'm not interrupting anything important. Just reading, I replied, keeping my tone neutral, despite the storm of emotions inside me. Well, I wanted to call because… She paused dramatically. The children have been asking about you constantly. They miss their grandma terribly. I gripped the phone tighter. Do they? How interesting that in 3 weeks, this is the first I'm hearing of it. We've all been reflecting, she continued, ignoring my comment. Dominic and I think perhaps we overreacted about those little memory slips. Everyone forgets things sometimes, right? Indeed, I said, though some people seem to have selective memories about family obligations. She laughed nervously. Listen, Agnes, we'd love to have you over for dinner this weekend. The children would be so excited to see you. Would Sunday work? I asked, mentally noting that Helena had filed the trust amendments on Thursday. Actually, tomorrow would be better. The children have been inconsolable. Why wait? The sudden urgency was telling. Someone, likely their financial advisor, had discovered the trusts during a routine review. Tomorrow it is, I agreed. What time should I arrive? 5 o'clock? And Agnes, maybe bring those special cookies the children love? Of course, I said, thinking of the lemon shortbread I'd taught Camden and Piper to shape into mathematical symbols. After hanging up, I sat quietly in my kitchen, watching the afternoon light create patterns on my tile floor. The house felt emptier in the weeks without their visits, no scattered toys or laughter echoing through the rooms. I wondered how quickly Renee would change her tune once she realized the trust conditions couldn't be easily circumvented. The next day, I arrived at their sprawling craftsman-style home at precisely 5 p.m., carrying a tin of freshly baked cookies and a cautious heart. Dominic opened the door immediately, as if he'd been watching for me. Mom, he said, awkwardly leaning in to kiss my cheek. You look well. Mathematics keeps the mind sharp, I replied with pointed emphasis. Behind him, Renee appeared in a casual yet clearly expensive outfit, her smile stretched wide. Agnes, come in, come in. The children are in the playroom. They're going to be ecstatic. The forced enthusiasm in her voice made my skin crawl, but I stepped inside, setting my purse down on the entryway bench, right where Renee had tossed my birthday gifts 3 weeks earlier. Camden! Piper! Renee called out, her voice song. Look who's here! The thundering of small feet preceded their appearance. Both children froze momentarily when they saw me, their expressions shifting from excitement to confusion. But you said Grandma was sick in her brain, Camden blurted, looking up at his mother. Renee's smile tightened. No, sweetie. I said Grandma was a little confused. But she's better now. I was never confused, Camden, I said gently, kneeling to their level despite my arthritic knee. Sometimes adults have disagreements about things. Piper approached cautiously. Are you staying away again? My heart cracked. Not if I can help it, sunshine. She rushed forward then, wrapping her arms around my neck. Camden followed a second later, and for a moment, the world righted itself as I held them close, breathing in the scent of their shampoo and feeling their small hearts beating against mine. Over dinner, an elaborate meal that Renee pointedly mentioned she'd prepared herself, the conversation remained superficially pleasant. The twins chattered about school and their new swimming lessons. Dominic discussed a building project. Renee kept refilling my wine glass with expensive Chardonnay. I barely touched. As I helped clear the dinner plates, Renee brushed past me in the kitchen. I hear you've done some financial planning for the children, she murmured, keeping her voice low. How thoughtful. Just a grandmother looking out for their future, I replied evenly. We should discuss it sometime, she said. Dominic and I have our own investment advisor. We could combine strategies. Before I could respond, she turned to the children with exaggerated brightness. Who wants to show Grandma the new playhouse in the backyard? The evening continued in this vein. Renee orchestrating perfect family moments while dropping hints about financial matters. As bedtime approached, she suggested I read the twins their story, watching from the doorway as I snuggled between them in Camden's bed. "Can you come back tomorrow, Grandma?" Piper asked, her small fingers tracing the wrinkles on my hand. I hesitated, glancing at Renee. "Of course she can," Renee answered for me. "Grandma can come anytime now. Maybe she could even pick you up from school sometimes." The children cheered while I kept my expression neutral. This sudden generosity felt calculated rather than genuine. 3 days later, I received a text from Dominic. "Mom, can we meet for coffee? Just the two of us." We met at a small cafe near my home. Dominic arrived late, looking harried, his architectural plans tucked under his arm. "How are you, Mom?" he asked, stirring his coffee absently. "I'm fine. How are you really doing, Dominic?" He sighed heavily. "Renee told me about these trusts you set up. Why didn't you ever mention them?" "Would it have mattered?" I asked quietly. "You've always been uncomfortable discussing money." "That's not fair. This isn't about discussing money. It's about setting up trusts with conditions attached. The conditions only exist because I was suddenly deemed unfit to see my own grandchildren," I pointed out. "What changed, Dominic? Why am I suddenly welcome again?" He shifted uncomfortably. "We were concerned about the children's stability." "No, you weren't," I said firmly. "Renee decided I was an inconvenience, and you went along with it. The same way you went along when she insisted I couldn't host Christmas because my house was too cramped. The same way you agreed when she said my garden vegetables weren't properly organic for the children." "Mom, let me finish. For 5 years, I've watched you defer to her on everything related to me. But what hurt most wasn't her behavior. It was your silence. You know I don't have cognitive issues. You know I raised you alone after your father died, working 2 jobs while completing my master's degree. Yet you stood by while I was humiliated and cut off from the children I love." Dominic stared into his coffee. "She can be persuasive. So can the truth," I countered. "And the truth is, those trusts are legally binding. The children will have their education and futures secured, provided I remain part of their lives." "She's furious," he admitted. "Our advisor found the trusts during a portfolio review. She says you're manipulating us with money. And what do you think?" He hesitated. "I think I've been a coward. When Dad died, you never once used his absence to get what you wanted. You never manipulated me. You taught me integrity." My eyes stung with unexpected tears. "Then show some now, Dominic." The following weeks brought a carefully choreographed performance from Renee. Suddenly, I was included in weekend plans. She called frequently with questions about recipes or gardening tips, transparent attempts to demonstrate harmonious family relationships to satisfy the trust conditions. One Tuesday afternoon, she appeared at my door unannounced with both children. "We thought Grandma might want company for lunch," she announced brightly, ushering the twins inside. While the children explored the toy box I'd maintained for them, Renee cornered me in the kitchen. "I need to understand exactly how these trusts work," she said, dropping the cheerful facade. "Our advisor says they're irrevocable, but surely there's some flexibility." "The terms are quite straightforward," I replied, slicing apples for the children's snack. "Regular, meaningful contact between me and my grandchildren until they're adults. Otherwise, the money goes to scholarships." "What constitutes meaningful contact?" she pressed. "If we FaceTime you daily, does that count?" "Helena, my attorney and the trustee, makes that determination," I explained. "She'll monitor our relationship to ensure it's genuine and consistent." Renee's expression soured. "That seems excessive. And what happens if if your health declines? Are we still bound by these terms if you're unable to interact properly?" The implied wish for my incapacitation hung between us. "The trust accounts for that possibility," I assured her. "Natural age, related changes or health issues wouldn't trigger the alternative distribution. Only deliberate exclusion would." Kamale Seddon blank. She drummed her manicured nails on my countertop. 500,000 each, she mused. "That's quite generous. Where did a teacher get that kind of money?" "Careful planning, modest living, and compound interest," I said. "Mathematics isn't just theoretical, Renee." She leaned closer. "Listen, Agnes, we both want what's best for the children. Wouldn't it make more sense to transfer these funds to our family account? We could still guarantee your visitation without this legal entanglement." "The trusts stay as they are," I said firmly. "They protect both the children's financial future and my relationship with them." Renee's smile disappeared entirely. "You don't trust us with our own children's money? After all we've done to include you these past weeks?" "Include me?" I echoed incredulously. 3 weeks ago, You told a farmer's market full of strangers that I had a mental condition making me unsafe around children. You locked me out of their birthday party. You took away the only joy I had left. And now you're angry that I've protected myself from your cruelty? She stepped back, her expression calculating. I think you're exaggerating what happened. Dominic agrees we were simply being cautious parents. If you push this issue, you might find your precious visitation becoming very minimal indeed. Helena can't monitor everything. A chill ran through me. She was already plotting ways to circumvent the trust conditions while maintaining technical compliance. Grandma, Piper called from the living room. Come see what I built. Go ahead, Renee said with a tight smile. Enjoy your purchased time with them. I moved past her toward the living room, my mind racing. Renee would find ways to make these visits hollow and infrequent if she could. The trust might force her hand, but it couldn't force genuine inclusion. That night, after they left, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of tea and my old financial planning notebooks. The trusts would protect the children's money and ensure some contact, but Renee's threat lingered. She could comply with the letter of the agreement while violating its spirit, turning what should be loving visits into cold obligations. I needed something more, something that would permanently change the power dynamic without harming my grandchildren in the process. As I flipped through years of careful financial records, an idea began to form. There was one resource I hadn't yet leveraged, one truth about our family finances that might finally open Dominic's eyes to what was happening. I picked up the phone and dialed Helena's number, my hand steady for the first time in weeks. I need to make one more amendment, I said when she answered. And I need your advice on something else, something that won't appear in any legal document. The next morning, I met with Helena at her small law office downtown. Unlike the gleaming corporate spaces where Renee's financial advisors worked, Helena's office was modest but meticulously organized, much like my own approach to life. Are you certain about this, Agnes? Helena asked after I'd explained my plan. It's entirely legal, but it could permanently alter your relationship with Dominic. My relationship with my son is already damaged, I replied. This might be the only way to save it. Helena nodded, making notes in her precise handwriting. I'll prepare the documents. The trust amendment is straightforward, but the other matter will require some coordination. How soon can we proceed? Give me 3 days, she said. And Agnes, be prepared for backlash. People rarely respond well to having their true nature exposed. Over the next 2 weeks, I maintained the facade of reconciliation. I attended a Sunday dinner at Dominic and Renee's home, where Renee performed her role of devoted daughter-in-law with theatrical precision. I accepted an invitation to watch the twins' swimming lesson, sitting beside Renee, who loudly informed other parents about her children's devoted grandmother. Each interaction felt hollow, her words dripping with insincerity. During these visits, I noticed how Dominic watched his wife carefully, adjusting his behavior to match her moods. The confident young man who had once built elaborate structures from scrap materials now seemed diminished in his own home. The twins, however, blossomed during our renewed time together. Camden showed me his collection of rocks, explaining each one's properties with scientific precision. Piper shared her drawings, intricate patterns that revealed her budding mathematical mind. They had missed me as deeply as I had missed them. On a Wednesday afternoon, Renee called, her voice unusually tentative. Agnes, we've been invited to a dinner party this Saturday. Very important clients of my firm. We wondered if you might watch the children? It would be overnight. Dominic suggested we could drop them at your house. The request surprised me. Until now, Renee had orchestrated visits that she could control and monitor. I'd be delighted, I said. What time should I expect you? Around 6? And Agnes, thank you. The children are so excited. When Saturday arrived, I prepared their favorite meals. Chicken with star-shaped carrots for dinner and blueberry pancakes for Sunday breakfast. I set up the spare bedroom with fresh sheets and the constellation nightlight they loved. Dominic dropped them off alone, explaining that Renee was getting ready for the important dinner. The children raced through my house, reclaiming their favorite spots as if they'd never been away. Thanks for doing this, Mom, Dominic said, lingering at the door. It means a lot to Renee. This client could mean a big promotion. Happy to help, I replied. Will you pick them up tomorrow morning or afternoon? Actually, he hesitated. Could they stay until Sunday evening? Renee mentioned something about a brunch follow-up with the clients. I agreed, hiding my surprise at this extended visit. After Dominic left, we had a wonderful evening, baking cookies, building a blanket fort in the living room, and reading 3 bedtime stories instead of the usual one. Sunday morning, While the twins were still sleeping, my phone rang. It was Helena. "Everything's in place," she said. "Are you ready?" "Yes," I answered quietly, looking toward the bedroom where my grandchildren slept peacefully. "It's time." Later that afternoon, as promised, Dominic and Renee arrived to collect the children. Renee appeared refreshed and triumphant. "The dinner was a complete success," she announced, accepting the coffee I offered. "The client practically promised me the account on the spot." "Wonderful news," I said. "The children were perfect guests. We had a lovely time." Renee smiled tightly. "Well, we shouldn't impose on you too often. Your energy levels at your age must be a consideration." Before I could respond, my doorbell rang. "Are you expecting someone?" Dominic asked. "Actually, yes," I said, moving to answer the door. Helena stood on my porch, portfolio in hand, looking every inch the professional attorney in her tailored suit. "Right on time," I said, inviting her inside. "Dominic, Renee, you remember my attorney, Helena?" Renee's expression shifted from confusion to wariness. "Is something wrong with the trusts?" "Not at all," Helena replied pleasantly. "But since you're both here, it seems an opportune moment to discuss some financial matters that Agnes has asked me to address." "Mom?" Dominic questioned. "What's this about?" "Please, sit down," I suggested, gesturing to my living room seating. "This won't take long." The twins were in the backyard, visible through the patio doors as they examined my vegetable garden. Renee perched on the edge of my sofa, her posture rigid. "I've amended the twins' trusts," I began. "Nothing dramatic, just ensuring that my relationship with them remains protected regardless of future circumstances." "We've been including you in everything," Renee protested immediately. "This past month has been a performance," I finished for her. "One motivated by money rather than love or respect." Dominic shifted uncomfortably. "Mom, that's not fair. We realized we overreacted about the memory issues." "There were never any memory issues, Dominic," I said quietly. "And we all know it." Helena opened her portfolio. "The amended trust now includes provisions for third-party verification of meaningful contact, not just frequency of visits. Quality, not merely quantity." Renee's face flushed. "This is ridiculous. You can't legally define meaningful interaction." "Courts do it regularly in custody cases," Helena replied calmly. "And as trustee, I'm empowered to make those determinations." "Fine," Renee snapped, her facade cracking. "We'll continue the visits. Is that all? We should get the children home for dinner." "Actually," I said, "there's something else." Here was the moment I'd been preparing for, the final piece of my plan that would either heal my family or fracture it beyond repair. "Dominic, do you remember the house you grew up in? The one on Mulberry Street?" He looked confused by the change in topic. "Of course. You sold it after I graduated college." "I didn't sell it," I corrected gently. "I kept it as a rental property. It's been generating income for 20 years now." "You never mentioned." "There's a lot I never mentioned," I continued. "Like the fact that I own 5 other rental properties in this county, or that my weekend financial consulting business has been extraordinarily successful." Renee was watching me intently now, her eyes calculating. "When your father died, I made 2 promises to myself," I explained. "First, that I would ensure you never felt financially insecure. Second, that I would teach you the value of honest work and living within your means." I nodded to Helena, who removed a document from her portfolio and placed it on the coffee table. "This is the deed to your house," I said to Dominic. "The house that you believe you've been paying a mortgage on for the past 7 years. Dominic stared at the document, then at me. "What are you talking about? We have a mortgage with First National." "No," I said softly. "You have a payment plan with me. I purchased that house outright when you found it. The monthly payments you've been making have been going into an investment account in your name." The silence in the room was absolute. Renee reached for the document with trembling fingers. "That's impossible," she whispered. "Our mortgage paperwork was with an LLC that I established," Helena interjected. "Completely legal and properly documented. Agnes wanted to help you afford the home you loved, while teaching financial responsibility." Dominic looked stunned. "Mom, that house cost nearly $1 million. "Yes," I acknowledged. "A significant portion of my investment portfolio went into purchasing it. I could have told you then, but you were so proud of buying your first home. And Renee was so insistent that you didn't need financial help from your penny-pinching mother." Renee's face had drained of color. "Are you saying we don't actually have a mortgage? That we own the house free and clear?" "No," I corrected. "I own the house. The investment account in Dominic's name now contains every dollar you've paid, plus interest." approximately $230,000 to date. I leaned forward, meeting my son's bewildered gaze. I never intended to keep this arrangement forever. The plan was to sign the house over to you on your 10th anniversary next year, along with the accumulated savings. A surprise gift to secure your future. Then why tell us now? Dominic asked, his voice barely audible. Because I needed you to understand something crucial about me and about your wife. I turned to Renee. You dismissed me as a confused old woman clutching coupons. You mocked my modest home and practical lifestyle. You decided I was disposable once I became inconvenient. I retrieved a folder from my desk and handed it to Dominic. These are the financial statements for all my properties and investments. My net worth is currently just over $4 million. Dominic's hands shook as he opened the folder. Renee leaned over his shoulder, her expression a mixture of shock and calculation. The woman you deemed too confused to be around children has been successfully managing a real estate portfolio and investment business while teaching mathematics for decades, I continued. The grandmother you banned from birthday parties owns the roof over your head. Why didn't you ever tell me? Dominic asked, hurt evident in his voice. Would it have changed anything? I asked gently. Would knowing I was wealthy have made you stand up to Renee when she lied about my mental capacity? Would it have given you the courage to bring the twins to see me when I was alone for 3 weeks, missing them desperately? Tears filled his eyes. I should have known better. Dad always said you were the smartest person he'd ever met. Your father understood something important, I said. Character reveals itself most clearly around money and power. When Renee thought I had neither, she showed exactly who she is. Renee straightened her spine. This is manipulative and cruel. You've been testing us. No, I corrected. I've been watching and waiting, hoping I was wrong about you. Hoping my son had chosen a partner who valued family over finances. I stood and walked to the patio doors, watching the twins examining the tomato plants they'd helped me plant months ago. The house remains in my name for now, I said without turning around. The trust conditions for the children stand. You're welcome to continue living there while we rebuild our family relationships on honest terms. When I finally turned back, Dominic was staring at Renee, seeing her perhaps for the first time. All those things you said about Mom, he said slowly. The supposed concerns about her memory, her confusion. Renee's composure cracked entirely. We needed space. Your mother was always there, always interfering with her outdated ideas about childcare and education, always judging my choices. She wasn't judging you, Dominic replied quietly. She was loving them. In that moment, watching my son's realization, I felt no triumph, only sadness for what had been lost, and hope for what might still be saved. Later, after they'd left with the twins, Dominic subdued, Renee seething, Helena remained behind to help me process what had happened. Do you think he'll ever forgive me for not being honest about the house? I asked. He might be more concerned with whether he can forgive himself, she replied wisely, or his wife. 3 months have passed since that Sunday revelation. Dominic visits more often now, sometimes alone, asking questions about his father and our life together that he never thought to ask before. Renee maintains a cold civility during my visits with the twins, which have returned to their regular Tuesday and Saturday schedule. The house remains in my name, a reminder of both my love for my son and the power of truth to correct imbalances. The trusts for Camden and Piper continue to grow, their futures secure regardless of what happens between their parents. I've learned that revenge, when served with love rather than malice, can heal as much as it hurts. My revenge wasn't taking back the house or imposing trust conditions. It was revealing my true self, refusing to be diminished, and reclaiming my rightful place in my grandchildren's lives. Some might call it manipulation. I call it justice. Mathematical in its precision, educational in its impact. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more stories about family dynamics and the unexpected ways we find our power. Share in the comments if you've ever had to stand your ground with family members who underestimated you. Your experiences might help others find their voice. The black screen of my iPhone mirrored my boss's darkening expression as it skidded across the polished marble. Time slowed while 22 executives stopped breathing. My hand hung empty where the device had been seconds before. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the presentation room, interrupting the CEO's question about the quarterly projections. You're fired, Gareth said, voice tight and low. Clean out your desk. Not a single person moved. Not the regional directors, not the marketing team, not even the CEO himself. Preston, who'd been mid-sip of water when my phone clattered at his expensive shoes. "I'm sorry, what did you just say?" I managed, my voice barely audible. Gareth stepped forward, positioning himself between me and Preston. "You heard me. This level of unprofessionalism is unacceptable. We don't need this kind of embarrassment." "It was an accident," I said, bending to retrieve my phone, noticing the new crack spreading across its screen like a lightning bolt. "Please leave the premises immediately," Gareth continued, "or I'll have security escort you out." The room remained frozen. 22 faces stared, some confused, some uncomfortable, none intervening. I'd spent 4 years at this company, built the entire digital marketing strategy from nothing, increased conversion rates by 217%, and now I was being terminated for dropping a phone. "Mr. Vaughn," I addressed the CEO directly. "I apologize for the interruption." Preston opened his mouth, but Gareth cut him off. "This meeting will reconvene in 15 minutes, Gareth announced. "Everyone take a break." As the executives shuffled out, I noticed something peculiar. Preston was studying Gareth with narrowed eyes, his head tilted slightly. At my desk, I mechanically placed personal items into a cardboard box: a small potted jade plant, a framed photo of my mother, an ergonomic wrist rest. 4 years reduced to a single box. Liv from Human Resources approached with termination papers. Her eyes darted nervously. "This isn't right," she whispered. "Everyone knows this isn't right." I signed where indicated, noting my hands weren't shaking. I felt oddly calm, disconnected from reality. "Your final paycheck will be deposited next Friday," Liv said formally. "Please surrender your access card." I handed it over, trying to calculate how long my savings would last. 2 months of rent? 3? Not enough for Mom's medication beyond that. As I walked toward the elevator, Gareth appeared, smiling thinly. "You should have stayed in your lane, Nayla," he said, voice silky. "Some people aren't built for this level." The elevator doors closed on his smug face. In my car, I gripped the steering wheel and finally allowed myself to breathe. This couldn't be happening. Not today. Not when I was so close to the promotion. Not when Mom's treatment was showing progress. My phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello? Nayla Choi? This is Preston Vaughn." My heart stopped. "I'd like to speak with you about what happened today," the CEO continued. "Are you available to meet?" 2 hours later, I sat across from Preston in his hotel suite while he asked questions nobody had ever bothered to ask before. About reporting structures, about team dynamics, about how certain projects were assigned and credited. When I returned to my apartment, a text notification appeared. Gareth wanted to meet. Urgently. Before I continue this story, if you're enjoying it so far, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Your support means everything, and trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next in Nayla's journey. My name is Nayla Choi, and until today, I was the digital strategy director at a multinational marketing firm. I'm 32, live alone in a 1-bedroom apartment, and spend most weekends visiting my mother at Silver Pines Recovery Center, where she's slowly healing from a stroke that nearly took her life last year. I was never supposed to be in that meeting with the CEO. Junior directors weren't typically included in executive presentations, but 3 days ago, Gareth had suddenly insisted I attend. "You'll hold the clicker and advance the slides," he'd instructed. "Don't speak unless directly addressed. Wear something appropriate." It should have been my first warning sign. I'd been watching Gareth operate for 4 years. He had a particular method: identify talented team members, extract their best ideas, present them as his own, then gradually push those same people out of the company. I'd survived by making myself indispensable, by knowing systems and clients better than anyone else. 6 months ago, I'd created a revolutionary algorithmic approach to client acquisition that increased new business by 40%. When the quarterly numbers came in, Gareth presented the strategy to the board as his brainchild. I said nothing. I needed the job, needed the health insurance for Mom. But something changed last month. I caught Gareth examining the figures from my latest campaign, erasing my name from the reports. Later that week, he hired Bryce, a fresh MBA graduate with connections to the board. Suddenly, Bryce was included in meetings I was excluded from. The day before the CEO's visit, I overheard Gareth and Bryce talking in the break room. "Once we transition Nayla's accounts to you next month, you'll be perfectly positioned for the director promotion," Gareth said. "What about Nayla?" Bryce asked. "Don't worry about her," Gareth replied. "I've been documenting performance issues for weeks. It's all arranged." I'd spent that night updating my resume, knowing my days were numbered, but I never expected it would happen like this. So publicly, so humiliatingly. What Gareth couldn't have known was that I'd noticed something during the presentation. The quarterly figures he was showing Preston were completely fabricated. The growth wasn't 22% as he claimed, it was barely 7%. And the new client acquisition numbers? Pure fantasy. My shock at seeing these falsified figures was what made my grip loosen. The phone didn't slip because I was nervous meeting the CEO. It slipped because I was witnessing a crime. And now, as I watched Gareth's car pull into the visitor parking space outside my apartment, I wondered, what did Preston tell him after I left? Why was Gareth here, knocking on my door with the desperate energy of a drowning man? I took a deep breath and turned the handle. Gareth pushed past me into my apartment without waiting for an invitation. His cologne filled my small living room, cloying and expensive. "What did you tell Preston?" he demanded, pacing on my faded area rug. "Exactly what happened," I replied, keeping the door open. "You fired me for dropping my phone." Gareth stopped pacing. "Don't play stupid, Nayla. He called me right after speaking with you. What else did you discuss?" I closed the door slowly, weighing my options. He asked about company operations, team dynamics, normal CEO curiosity. "Did you show him anything? Any files or emails?" I noticed sweat beating at his temples despite the cool temperature in my apartment. "Why would I have company files? I was escorted out, remember?" Gareth's eyes darted to my laptop on the coffee table. "Preston mentioned a special meeting tomorrow morning. Just you, him, and the board." My heart raced, but I kept my expression neutral. Preston had mentioned no such meeting. "I wasn't aware of that," I said carefully. "Listen to me very carefully." Gareth stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Whatever you think you know means nothing. Preston and I go back 20 years. He was my mentor at business school. One word from me, and you won't just lose this job. You'll be unhireable anywhere that matters." The threat hung between us, tangible as a third person in the room. "Is that all?" I asked, moving toward the door. Gareth smiled, confidence returning. "Preston's testing your loyalty. It's what he does with promising talent. If you pass, there might still be a place for you. If you fail," he shrugged. "Well, your mother's care is expensive, isn't it?" As he brushed past me, he whispered, "Smart people know when to stay quiet, Nayla." The door closed behind him, and I sank onto my couch, mind racing. Was Gareth telling the truth about his relationship with Preston? Was this all an elaborate test? Or was Gareth desperately trying to save himself? My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Hotel Westwood, 7 a.m. tomorrow. Private dining room. Come alone. PV." I stared at the message for a long time, calculating risks and possibilities. By morning, I would need to make a decision that would alter the course of my entire future, and my mother's care hung in the balance. What I didn't know then was that Gareth had already set another plan in motion, one that would make our confrontation tomorrow far more dangerous than I could possibly imagine. Sleep avoided me that night. I sat at my kitchen table surrounded by notes and printouts I'd secretly gathered over months. Call it paranoia or instinct, but I'd been keeping records of Gareth's inconsistencies since the day he took credit for my first major campaign. My phone pinged with a message from Liv. "Heard what happened. This isn't right. Need anything?" I hesitated before responding. Liv had always been kind, but company loyalty typically trumped personal connections. "I'm okay, thanks for asking." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then reappeared. "Gareth's freaking out. Called emergency meeting after you left. Never seen him like this." My pulse quickened. "What happened?" "Don't know details, but Preston stayed behind after everyone left. Closed door meeting for over an hour." I set my phone down, mind racing. Whatever Gareth and Preston discussed had clearly rattled my former boss enough to drive to my apartment with threats. At 3 a.m., I called the only person who always gave me straight answers, my mother. "Baby girl," she answered, voice heavy with sleep, but instantly alert. "What's wrong?" I told her everything. The firing, Preston's call, Gareth's visit. "Do you have proof?" Mom asked when I finished. Even weakened by her stroke, her mind remained razor sharp. "Some, not enough." "Then you need leverage," she said simply. "Find something they need more than they need you to stay quiet." "What if I'm walking into a trap tomorrow?" Her laugh was soft. "Nayla, you've been supporting us since you were 19 when your father left. You navigated me through a stroke and insurance nightmares. You think some corporate boys can outmaneuver you?" After we hung up, I turned to my laptop. If I was meeting Preston tomorrow, I needed more than suspicions. I logged into my personal cloud storage, where I'd backed up key documents. Not stolen company files, I wasn't that reckless, but my own work products and communications that painted a clear picture when assembled properly. By dawn, I had prepared a simple presentation. Nothing dramatic, just facts arranged in a sequence that told a story even a CEO flying between dozens of subsidiaries could understand quickly. The Hotel Westwood's lobby gleamed with quiet luxury at 6:50 a.m. I adjusted my blazer, conscious that I was wearing the same outfit from yesterday. The receptionist directed me to a private dining room overlooking the city. Preston was already there, drinking coffee and reading from a tablet. He looked up when I entered, his expression unreadable. "Miss Choi, thank you for coming. Thank you for reaching out," I replied, taking the seat he indicated. A server appeared with coffee, then discreetly vanished. Preston set his tablet aside. "Yesterday was unusual," he began. "In 30 years of business, I've never seen an executive fire someone for dropping a phone." I stayed silent, waiting. After our conversation, I spoke with Gareth at length. He provided a different narrative. Claimed your performance has been declining for months, that the phone incident was merely the final straw. My stomach tightened. So, Gareth had already positioned his defense. "And what do you think?" I asked. Preston studied me carefully. "I think it's strange that our best-performing region would suddenly have declining metrics under the same leadership that built it." He slid his tablet toward me. On the screen was a comparison of quarterly reports, the actual numbers alongside the ones Gareth had presented. "These discrepancies are concerning," Preston continued. "But more concerning is why a regional director would falsify them. Have you asked him?" "Of course. He claims these are reporting errors from your department." The blood rushed to my face. Of course he would blame me, the newly fired employee who couldn't defend herself. "Mr. Vaughn, He held up a hand. "Before you respond, I should tell you that I've temporarily suspended Gareth pending an investigation." I blinked in surprise. "This isn't just about dropped phones or numerical discrepancies," Preston continued. "After our meeting, I spoke with several team members. The picture they painted was troubling." "What did they say?" I asked, heart pounding. "That's not important right now. What's important is what you can tell me. I need to understand what's been happening in that office." I reached for my bag, removing my laptop. "I think it's better if I show you." For the next hour, I walked Preston through my presentation. Email trails showing my work mysteriously appearing under Gareth's name. Client feedback addressed to me that had been redacted in official reports. Timestamp discrepancies showing projects reassigned after successful completion. Preston asked pointed questions, occasionally making notes. When I finished, he was silent for several minutes. "Miss Choi, are you aware of the quarterly leadership meeting scheduled for this afternoon?" I shook my head. "All regional directors and executive staff will be there," he continued, "including Gareth." My throat went dry. "I see. I'd like you to attend, but I've been fired. Consider that decision under review." Preston's expression softened slightly. "This puts you in a difficult position, I know, but I need someone who understands these operations from the inside." "What exactly would you need me to do?" "Simply be present. I'll handle the rest." He checked his watch. "The meeting begins at 2 p.m. That gives us time to prepare." As I gathered my things, Preston added, "One more thing. Gareth mentioned your mother's health situation. Is that a concern in this matter?" The question caught me off guard. "My mother had a stroke last year. Her treatment is expensive. And your health insurance terminated with your employment yesterday." It wasn't a question. I nodded, stomach sinking at the reminder. "I'll have HR reinstated immediately, retroactive to yesterday. Whatever happens next, your mother's care shouldn't be collateral damage." I swallowed hard. "Thank you." Outside the hotel, I called Mom with the update. "I think it might work out," I told her. "Of course it will," she replied. "You're a Choi woman. We don't break. We rebuild." At 1:30 p.m., I parked in the company lot, feeling strangely detached as I swiped the temporary access card Preston had arranged. The security guard did a double take when he saw me. "Miss Choi? Thought you'd left us." "Just temporarily," I replied, summoning a confidence I didn't entirely feel. The elevator ride to the executive floor gave me time to settle my nerves. When the doors opened, Liv was waiting, eyes wide. "Nayla, what are you doing here?" she whispered, falling into step beside me. "Preston invited me to the quarterly meeting." Her eyebrows shot up. "Gareth is telling everyone you're trying to sue for wrongful termination. He's been in his office all morning with legal." That explained the panicked text messages I'd been ignoring from unknown numbers all morning. "Is he in the conference room already?" I asked. "No, but the other directors are. It's tense in there." As we approached the conference room, Bryce emerged from Gareth's office, stopping abruptly when he saw me. "You've got nerve showing up here," he said, blocking my path. "I was invited," I replied evenly. "By who? Legal? Because they're the only ones you'll be talking to after the stunt you pulled." Before I could respond, Preston rounded the corner with two men I recognized from the board of directors. "Ah, Miss Choi, glad you could make it," Preston said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Please, join us in the conference room." Bryce's face drained of color as he stepped aside. Inside, conversation halted as I entered with Preston. 14 regional directors stared in confusion. I took a seat near the door, feeling their eyes on me. Minutes later, Gareth strode in, stopping mid-step when he saw me. For a split second, naked panic flashed across his face before his professional mask slipped back into place. "Sir, I wasn't aware former employees would be joining us," he said to Preston, voice tight. Preston smiled pleasantly. "I invited Miss Choi personally. Shall we begin?" Gareth took his position at the head of the table, shuffling papers with trembling hands. As he launched into his presentation about quarterly performance, I noticed several directors exchanging glances. 20 minutes in, as Gareth clicked to a slide showing a 27% growth in new business, Preston cleared his throat. "Gareth, I'm a bit confused by these figures. They don't match what I received from accounting this morning." The room went completely silent. "There must be some mistake," Gareth said, smile faltering. "My team prepared these directly from the source data." "That's interesting," Preston replied, "because I have the source data right here." He slid printed spreadsheets across the table. "Perhaps you could explain the discrepancy?" As the directors examined the papers, murmurs broke out around the room. "These numbers aren't even close," someone whispered. Gareth's face reddened. "There's obviously been a clerical error. My assistant must have—" "Your assistant confirmed she never touched these figures," Preston interrupted. "In fact, she had quite a few interesting things to say this morning." The atmosphere in the room shifted palpably. I sat perfectly still, watching the scene unfold. "Sir," Gareth said, voice strained, "perhaps we should discuss this privately after the meeting." "I think not," Preston replied. "You see, I've spent the morning speaking with several team members. The picture they've painted is concerning, to say the least." Preston turned to me. "Miss Choi, would you mind joining me up here?" Heart pounding, I moved to the front of the room. Gareth's eyes followed me, his expression hardening into something dangerous. "Yesterday," Preston addressed the room, "I witnessed something unusual. Miss Choi was fired on the spot for accidentally dropping her phone during a presentation. At the time, I found it disproportionate. Now I understand it was merely the latest in a pattern of behavior designed to remove anyone who might threaten certain arrangements." Gareth's knuckles whitened as he gripped the edge of the table. "Mr. Vaughn," he said, voice low, "whatever she's told you is the desperate fabrication of a terminated employee." "Is it?" Preston asked mildly. "Because I haven't told you what she said yet." The tension in the room was unbearable as Preston reached for his briefcase. Whatever he was about to reveal would change everything, and Gareth knew it. As the briefcase clicked open, Gareth suddenly lunged toward me, eyes wild with desperation. "You think you've won?" he hissed. "You have no idea what you've done." Security guards appeared instantly, restraining Gareth before he could reach me. His sudden movement had knocked over a water pitcher, sending liquid cascading across the polished table and onto several directors' laps. "Get your hands off me!" Gareth shouted, struggling against the guards. "Do you know who I am?" Preston remained perfectly calm. "I know exactly who you are, Gareth. That's the problem." As the guards escorted Gareth back to his seat, I noticed the room had transformed. The air felt charged, like the moment before lightning strikes. Every person present sensed they were witnessing something momentous. "Now," Preston continued, removing a thick folder from his briefcase, "let's discuss what we've learned." For the next 30 minutes, Preston methodically outlined what my presentation had only hinted at. Financial reports showing discrepancies dating back 18 months. Client communications that had been altered before reaching upper management. Projects reassigned after completion to show different leadership. With each revelation, Gareth seemed to physically shrink in his chair. "Most concerning," Preston said, turning to a final set of documents. "Are these approval forms for bonus distributions? Notice anything unusual, directors?" The papers circulated around the table. One by one, faces registered shock, then anger. "These signatures aren't mine," said Talia, the Midwest director. "I never approved redirecting my team's performance bonuses." "Mine either," added Damon from the Western region. That's because, Preston explained, someone has been systematically redirecting bonus allocations from high-performing teams to a select few individuals. He glanced at Bryce, who suddenly found the floor fascinating, creating the impression that certain teams were outperforming others, when in fact, the opposite was true. Gareth's voice cut through the murmurs. This is a witch hunt. Where's your proof I had anything to do with this? Preston smiled thinly. I haven't accused you specifically, Gareth. Interesting that you jumped to that conclusion. He nodded to his assistant, who distributed another set of documents. These are authorization codes used to access the compensation system. Each code is unique to an individual user. The room fell silent as everyone read the logs, showing Gareth's credentials used to modify bonus allocations 19 separate times over the past year. This is impossible, Gareth sputtered. Someone must have stolen my credentials. An interesting theory, Preston replied, which is why I asked it to pull the access records. He turned to a new page. Every entry was made from your office computer, during business hours, on days when keycard records show you were present. Gareth's face went ashen. His eyes darted around the room, searching for an ally, finding none. There's been a mistake, he insisted, voice cracking. I was set up. Preston turned to me. Miss Choi, yesterday morning before the presentation, did you notice anything unusual about your seating arrangement? I nodded, remembering. Gareth changed the seating chart last minute. He insisted on standing directly behind me during the presentation. And the phone you dropped, whose idea was it for you to hold it during the presentation? Gareth's. He said I needed to advance the slides, despite the fact that we have remote clickers specifically for that purpose, Preston added. The Midwest director leaned forward. Wait, are you saying he planned for her to drop the phone? Not exactly, Preston replied. Miss Choi, what did you notice during the presentation that might have caused you to lose your grip? I took a deep breath. The figures Gareth was presenting didn't match anything I'd seen in our actual reports. The growth wasn't 22% as he claimed. It was barely 7%. I was shocked when I realized the numbers were completely fabricated. And at that moment, I felt someone bump my elbow from behind. That's when I dropped my phone. All eyes turned to Gareth, who had gone completely still. Does anyone else recall this? Preston asked the room. Liv spoke up from the corner where she'd been quietly taking notes. I saw it. Gareth kept inching closer behind Nayla throughout the presentation. When she paused at the third quarter projections, he definitely made contact with her arm. Another voice chimed in, Tasha, from reception. I saw it too. I was bringing in additional water pitchers. He was watching her like a hawk the entire time, and definitely moved forward just before her phone fell. This is absurd, Gareth protested, but his voice lacked conviction. Preston closed his folder deliberately. Gareth, effective immediately. Your position with this company is terminated. Security will escort you to collect your personal belongings. The room erupted in whispers. Gareth stood, straightening his tie with trembling hands. You're making a massive mistake, he said, voice low. I built this region from nothing. Did you? Preston asked mildly. The numbers suggest otherwise. As security moved toward him, Gareth looked directly at me, hatred burning in his eyes. This isn't over, Nayla. Once Gareth was escorted out, Preston addressed the remaining directors. We'll take a 30-minute break. When we return, we'll discuss restructuring and next steps. People filed out, casting curious glances my way. Preston approached me quietly. That went as expected, he said. How are you holding up? Still processing, I admitted. I never thought it would end like this. It's not quite over, Preston replied. There's the matter of your position to discuss. During the break, directors approached me one by one, offering support and apologies for not speaking up sooner. Many admitted they'd witnessed Gareth's behavior, but feared retaliation. The pattern had been clear to everyone except those with the power to stop it. When the meeting reconvened, Preston announced an immediate audit of all departments to identify any other discrepancies. Then he turned to me. Nayla Choi has demonstrated exceptional integrity under difficult circumstances, he told the group. I'm creating a new position, Director of Operational Integrity, reporting directly to me. Ms. Choi will oversee implementation of new transparency protocols across all regions. The announcement was met with approving nods. After the meeting adjourned, directors lined up to congratulate me. Through the glass walls of the conference room, I caught glimpses of Gareth being escorted through the office, cardboard box in hand, employees watching in stunned silence. As the day wound down, I found myself alone in my old office, soon to be my new office, staring out at the city lights beginning to twinkle in the dusk. A soft knock on the door interrupted my thoughts. Liv stood there holding a small plant. Thought your jade plant might want to come home. I smiled, taking it from her. Thanks. It's been a day. That's an understatement. She hesitated. There's something you should know. Something I couldn't say in front of everyone. My smile faded. What is it? The night before the CEO's visit, I overheard Gareth on the phone with someone. He said, once she's gone, we'll have complete control over the allocation system. No one will question the numbers. I set the plant down carefully. Did you catch who he was speaking with? Liv nodded. That's why I couldn't say anything earlier. It was Preston's executive assistant, Anthony. My blood ran cold. Anthony? Are you sure? Positive. They mentioned meeting for drinks later to finalize arrangements. I thanked Liv for the information. Mind racing. If Preston's assistant was involved, how deep did this conspiracy go? Was Preston himself aware? Was my new position just another trap? After Liv left, I sat alone, weighing my options. The smart move would be to accept the promotion, keep my head down, and protect my career. But something inside me rebelled at the thought of letting corruption continue at a higher level. I pulled out my phone and dialed Preston's direct line, which he'd given me that morning. Mr. Vaughn, there's something important we need to discuss. About your assistant, Anthony. There was a long pause before Preston replied, I was wondering when you'd figure that part out. You knew? Not until this morning. Anthony has been reassigned, effective immediately. Relief washed over me. So it's really over? Not quite, Preston said. Meet me in the parking garage in 15 minutes. There's one more thing we need to address. In the dimly lit garage, Preston was waiting beside his car, expression grave. What I'm about to show you doesn't leave this conversation, he said, handing me a tablet. On the screen was an email chain between Gareth and someone named PV, discussing ways to artificially inflate regional numbers. The most recent message was dated just 2 days ago. My heart sank. PV. Preston Vaughn? You were part of this? Preston's expression remained unreadable. Keep reading. I scrolled through more messages, confusion mounting. These weren't Preston's words or writing style. Then I noticed a detail. The email signature included a middle initial, Patrick V. Williams. The board's vice chairman, I breathed. Gareth was working with Patrick Williams, not you. Preston nodded grimly. Gareth thought he had protection at the highest level. That's why he was so confident in firing you publicly. He believed Williams would shield him. Does Williams know you've discovered this? Not yet. That meeting is scheduled for tomorrow morning. I handed the tablet back, mind reeling with implications. Why are you telling me this? Preston smiled for the first time that day. Because when Williams tries to paint this as a misunderstanding tomorrow, I need a witness who understands exactly what happened. As we parted ways, I realized the true extent of my revenge against Gareth. It wasn't just about getting my job back or seeing him fired. It was about dismantling the entire corrupt system he'd built, piece by piece, all the way to the top. The next morning, when I walked into the boardroom alongside Preston to face Patrick Williams, I felt no fear, only certainty that justice would finally be served. If you've made it this far in Nayla's journey, please hit the like button and leave a comment sharing your thoughts. Have you ever witnessed workplace injustice like this? Subscribe to hear more stories of triumph over adversity, because sometimes the best revenge isn't just getting even, it's rising above. $15 million. His voice boomed across the medical billing floor like a war cry. Every conversation stopped. Every keyboard went silent. You've been stealing from our clients, billing for services that never existed, and I have the proof right here. I felt 30 faces turn toward me, their expressions shifting from curiosity to horror. My supervisor, Garrett, stood behind my chair waving a thick folder above his head like some kind of trophy. His face had turned that particular shade of red that meant he'd rehearsed this moment in his bathroom mirror. This lawsuit will ruin you completely, he continued, his voice carrying that theatrical edge he used during team meetings. Security is on their way up to escort you out permanently. You're finished in this industry. The silence stretched like a rubber band about to snap. I could hear Melody from accounting whisper something to her neighbor. Someone's chair squeaked. The copy machine hummed in the background, completely unaware that my entire world was supposedly crumbling. But here's the thing about moments like this. They reveal who you really are. I stayed seated. My fingers found their familiar rhythm against the desk surface, a steady drumbeat that seemed to echo in the sudden quiet. A smile started at the corner of my mouth, the the kind that comes from knowing something nobody else does. Before we make any dramatic moves, I said, my voice cutting through his performance like a knife through butter, maybe you'd like to see what I've been keeping safe in here. I reached for my bottom desk drawer. The change in Garrett's face was instant. All that manufactured rage drained away like water from a broken dam. His mouth opened slightly, then closed. The folder in his hands trembled just enough for me to notice. "What are you doing?" he asked, but his voice had lost all its thunder. My hand rested on the drawer handle. "Just thought you might want to know what I do in my spare time." The entire department leaned forward without realizing it. Garrett took a step back. 3 months ago, I'd been just another face in this sterile office, processing medical claims and wondering why some procedures generated such unusually high insurance payouts. Patients I'd never heard of. Treatments that seemed too expensive. And most interesting of all, my supervisor's sudden ability to afford a luxury sports car on a manager's salary. But instead of reporting him like any normal person would do, I'd done something else entirely. I'd applied for a different kind of job. The State Insurance Fraud Investigation Unit had been thrilled to have someone willing to work from the inside. Within 2 weeks, I was living a double life, processing bills during the day, feeding information to investigators at night. Every fake patient account Garrett created, every inflated procedure he approved, every dollar he thought he was stealing, I'd been tracking it all. But that wasn't even the best part. The best part was what I'd been doing with his money. Each time Garrett siphoned funds from those insurance overpayments, each time he thought he was building his secret fortune, I'd been making sure those exact amounts ended up somewhere he'd never expect. A victim compensation fund managed by the state. He'd been working overtime, staying late, processing more fraudulent claims than ever before, convinced he was getting rich. He had no idea he'd been funding his own victims' recovery accounts. The lawsuit he'd just announced, that was supposed to be his grand finale. Frame me for everything. Claim I was the mastermind behind the fraud, then disappear with his hidden money before anyone could investigate properly. My drawer slid open with a soft whisper. I pulled out a single business card and held it up so everyone could see. The state seal gleamed under the fluorescent lights. State Insurance Fraud Investigation Division, I announced clearly. Special Investigator. That's actually my job title here. Garrett's knees buckled slightly. He grabbed the edge of my desk to steady himself. Every transaction you've processed in the last 90 days has been monitored and reversed, I continued, standing up slowly. That $700,000 you think you've stolen? It's been sitting in a state-controlled account, earning interest for the people you hurt. The office remained frozen in absolute silence. "Oh, and that beautiful new car you bought last month?" I smiled wider. "Purchased with state funds as part of our investigation. We own it now." His hands started shaking. "But here's my absolute favorite part," I said, savoring every word like fine wine. "Remember all those extra hours you put in? All those weekends you spent here, staying late to process those high-value fake claims? You were so dedicated, so thorough." I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in. "You built the most complete fraud case our department has ever assembled. Against yourself." 2 people in plain clothes stepped off the elevator. They'd been waiting in the lobby all morning. One of them held up a badge. "The warrant was signed at 9 this morning," he announced. "All accounts frozen. All assets seized." As they began reading Garrett his rights, I gathered my personal items from the desk. My actual supervisor from the fraud division appeared beside me. Someone Garrett had never met. "Outstanding work," she said quietly. "He generated enough material to put himself away for 20 years. The insurance companies are calling this the cleanest operation they've ever witnessed." I looked back at Garrett one more time. He was staring at the handcuffs, finally understanding that every single move he'd made had been planned by me. "The beautiful irony?" I called out as they led him toward the elevator. "You actually were stealing $15 million. You just never got to keep a single penny of it. But wait, let me tell you how this really started. Because the woman who just destroyed Garrett's life wasn't always this calculating. My name is Raven, and 6 months ago, I was a completely different person. If you're loving this story of ultimate workplace revenge, hit that like button and subscribe for more incredible true stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. And drop a comment telling me, have you ever suspected someone at work of stealing? Because what I discovered next will blow your mind. I used to believe in playing by the rules. I used to think that hard work and loyalty would eventually pay off. I used to trust that people in authority positions had earned their power through merit. That was before I met Garrett. 6 months earlier, I'd been working as a medical billing specialist at a mid-sized healthcare administration company. It wasn't glamorous work, but I was good at it. Really good. I could spot discrepancies in insurance claims faster than anyone else in the department, and I took pride in making sure healthcare providers got paid accurately for their services. Garrett had been my supervisor for about 8 months when I first noticed something odd. A patient named Vincent had supposedly received a series of expensive cardiac procedures at a clinic across town. The total billing came to nearly $40,000, which wasn't unusual for heart surgery. But when I cross-referenced the patient information with the clinic's records, something didn't match up. Vincent's address led to an empty lot. His phone number was disconnected. His insurance information was valid, but when I called the insurance company, they had no record of authorizing those procedures. I brought it to Garrett's attention during our weekly review meeting. "Must be a clerical error," he said without even looking at the file. "These things happen. Just process it through." But it kept happening. More patients with questionable addresses, more procedures that seemed too convenient, more insurance payouts that made my instincts scream that something was wrong. The breaking point came when I discovered a patient who'd supposedly received a kidney transplant, while the same patient was listed as having received a different kidney transplant at another facility 3 weeks earlier. Unless this person had been born with 3 kidneys, someone was lying. When I brought this to Garrett again, his response was different. "Raven," he said, closing my file without reading it, "you're being overly cautious. These medical facilities know what they're doing. Our job is to process claims, not to play detective." That's when I knew for certain something was wrong. Because any legitimate supervisor would want to investigate potential fraud. Any honest manager would be concerned about processing false claims. But Garrett wanted me to stop looking too closely at the details, so I started watching him instead. I became a student of Garrett's habits. I arrived early and stayed late, not to impress him, but to observe him. I watched which files he accessed when he thought nobody was around. I paid attention to which phone calls he took behind closed doors. I noticed when he started wearing expensive watches and driving a car that cost more than twice his annual salary. The breakthrough came on a Tuesday evening in late February. I'd told everyone I was leaving for the day, but instead I'd hidden in the supply closet down the hall. Through the gap in the door, I watched Garrett return to his office after the cleaning crew had finished their rounds. He spent the next 2 hours working on something that definitely wasn't part of his regular duties. I could see him typing, printing pages, and making phone calls in hushed tones. When he finally left, I waited another 30 minutes before slipping back into the office. His computer was locked, but Garrett had made a crucial mistake. He'd left a printed email on his desk, probably planning to shred it in the morning. The email was from someone named Craig at a medical clinic, thanking Garrett for processing the Patterson account so quickly and mentioning that the usual split will be transferred by Friday. Patterson was one of the patients I'd flagged as suspicious. I photographed the email with my phone and started digging deeper into the Patterson file the next morning. What I found made my stomach turn. Patterson had supposedly received a series of cancer treatments totaling $68,000, but when I called the clinic directly, they had no record of anyone by that name ever being treated there. The insurance company had already paid out the full amount. That's when I realized the scope of what Garrett was doing. He wasn't just stealing money, he was stealing money that was supposed to help sick people. Every fake claim he processed meant real patients somewhere else might have their legitimate treatments denied due to increased fraud prevention measures. But confronting him directly would have been useless. Garrett was too smart to leave obvious traces, and he had administrative access to systems I couldn't touch. If I reported him through normal channels, he'd have time to destroy anything incriminating and probably find a way to blame me for whatever investigators discovered. That's when I had an idea that would have seemed impossible to the old Raven. I started researching the State Insurance Fraud Investigation Division. They had a website with information about their ongoing cases and how they operated. What caught my attention was a section about undercover operations and how they sometimes worked with inside informants in suspected fraud rings. I spent a week crafting the perfect application. I emphasized my billing experience, my ability to spot discrepancies, and most importantly, my suspicion that my current workplace might be involved in systematic fraud. I didn't mention Garrett by name, but I provided enough specific details about the suspicious claims I'd identified to get their attention. The response came faster than I'd expected. Within 3 days, I received a call from Special Agent Caroline who wanted to meet in person. We arranged to meet at a small restaurant across town, far from anywhere Garrett might accidentally see us. Caroline was nothing like what I'd expected from a government investigator. She was probably in her 40s, with graying hair and the kind of tired eyes that come from seeing too much human greed. But when I showed her the photograph of Garrett's email and explained the pattern of suspicious claims I'd identified, those tired eyes became very sharp very quickly. "How long has this been going on?" she asked. "At least 8 months that I can prove," I told her. "Probably longer. And you think your supervisor is working directly with medical facilities to create false claims?" "I think he's running an entire network. The amounts are too large and too coordinated for him to be working alone." Caroline studied the information I'd brought for nearly 20 minutes without speaking. Finally, she looked up at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "We've been investigating reports of organized medical billing fraud in your area for over a year," she said, "but we've never had someone on the inside before. If you're willing to work with us, we might be able to build a case that shuts down the entire operation." "What would that involve?" "You'd continue working at your current job, but everything you do would be coordinated with our investigation. We'd provide you with specialized software to track transactions, and you'd report directly to me. But Raven, you need to understand, this isn't a game. If your supervisor realizes what you're doing, it could be dangerous." I thought about all the sick people whose legitimate claims might have been delayed or denied because of Garrett's fraud. I thought about the insurance companies who'd been paying out money for treatments that never happened. I thought about how Garrett had looked me in the eye and told me to stop asking questions about obvious fraud. "When do I start?" Caroline smiled for the first time since we'd met. "You already have." The next 3 months were the most intense of my life. During the day, I performed my regular job duties while secretly installing monitoring software on the office computers. Caroline had provided me with programs that could track every keystroke, every file access, and every transaction that passed through our systems. At night, I transmitted everything to the investigation team and helped them piece together the scope of Garrett's operation. What we discovered was far worse than I'd initially suspected. Garrett wasn't just working with 1 or 2 clinics. He'd built relationships with more than a dozen medical facilities across 3 counties. Some were legitimate clinics whose administrators had been corrupted by easy money. Others were complete fabrications, fake medical offices that existed only on paper, with rented mailboxes and disconnected phone numbers. The network processed false claims for everything from routine checkups to major surgeries. They specialized in procedures that were difficult for insurance companies to verify quickly: mental health treatments, physical therapy sessions, expensive diagnostic tests. By the time an insurance investigator could contact a patient to confirm they'd received treatment, the money had already been distributed and the trail had gone cold. But the most shocking discovery was how sophisticated the operation had become. Garrett and his associates had created an entire database of fake patients, complete with fabricated medical histories, insurance information, and even fake family members who could verify treatments if investigators called to check. They'd stolen the identities of real people, some living, some deceased, and used those identities to create convincing medical profiles. A construction worker from 2 counties over had supposedly received expensive cancer treatments without ever knowing his identity had been used. A retired teacher had apparently undergone multiple surgeries while she was actually traveling across the country visiting her grandchildren. Caroline estimated the total fraud at somewhere between $12 and $15 million over the past 2 years. "This is the largest medical billing fraud case we've ever encountered in this region," she told me during one of our evening meetings. "And we couldn't have built this case without your help." But building the case was only half the challenge. The other half was timing the arrests perfectly so that nobody in the network could escape or destroy crucial information. That's where Garrett's personality worked against him in ways he never could have imagined. He was paranoid about getting caught, which made him meticulous about creating backups of everything. He kept detailed records of every transaction, every fake patient file, every payment split with his network of corrupt clinics. In his mind, this information was insurance. If anyone in his network tried to betray him, he could destroy them with his comprehensive records of their involvement. What he didn't realize was that those same comprehensive records would become the foundation of the case against him. Caroline's team had been monitoring his computer activities for weeks, watching him update his files and back up his data. Every time he tried to protect himself from his criminal associates, he was actually making our case stronger. But Garrett was getting nervous. Several times during March, I caught him staring at me when he thought I wasn't looking. He'd started asking subtle questions about my work, wanting to know why I was staying late some evenings, and whether I'd noticed anything unusual about our claim processing procedures. The tension in the office had become almost unbearable. I could feel Garrett's suspicion growing every day, but I couldn't change my behavior without raising even more questions. I had to continue acting like the dedicated employee I'd always been while secretly coordinating with federal investigators to bring down the man who signed my paychecks. Then, on a Thursday morning in early April, everything started falling apart. I arrived at work to find Garrett in a heated phone conversation behind his closed office door. Even through the walls, I could hear him saying things like, "Too risky," and "We need to shut this down temporarily." When he finally emerged, his face was pale, and he was sweating despite the office air conditioning. "Raven," he said, his voice unnaturally casual, "I need you to pull all the files for patients whose last names start with M through R. There's been some kind of system glitch, and we need to verify that all the information was processed correctly." This was a lie. There had been no system glitch, and asking me to pull files alphabetically made no sense for any legitimate verification process. But those files included most of the fake patients I'd been tracking for Caroline's investigation. Garrett was trying to determine how much I knew. I spent the entire day walking a tightrope, pulling the requested files while trying to act like I hadn't noticed the pattern of false information they contained. Every time Garrett walked past my desk, I could feel him watching me, looking for any sign that I understood what I was handling. That evening, I met Caroline at our usual restaurant, but this time she wasn't alone. 2 other agents sat at our table, and their expressions were grim. "We think Garrett suspects something," Caroline said without preamble. "Our monitoring software detected that he's been running security scans on the office computers, looking for unauthorized programs." My heart started racing. "Does he know about the monitoring software you installed?" "We don't think so, but he knows something isn't right, and that makes this situation extremely dangerous for you." "What do you mean?" One of the other agents, a man named Paul, leaned forward. "When people running fraud operations feel cornered, they look for someone to blame, someone to frame for their crimes so they can escape clean." "You think he's planning to frame me?" "We think he's already planning it," Caroline said, "which is why we need to move faster than we'd originally intended." "How much faster?" "We're executing the arrests tomorrow morning, all locations simultaneously, so nobody in the network can warn the others." I felt a mixture of relief and terror. After months of living this double life, it would finally be over. But I also realized that if something went wrong, if Garrett somehow escaped or if the case fell apart, my life would be ruined. "There's one more thing," Caroline said, her voice softer now. "We've been monitoring Garrett's communications, and we know he's planning to make some kind of move against you tomorrow. We don't know exactly what, but our technical team intercepted fragments of emails mentioning your name and phrases like taking the fall and lawsuit. He's going to try to frame me for everything? That's our assessment. Which is why tomorrow morning, instead of conducting a normal arrest, we're going to let Garrett make his move first. We want to catch him in the act of trying to frame you for his crimes." Paul pulled out a small device that looked like a hearing aid. "You'll wear this tomorrow. It's a transmitter that will broadcast everything happening around you directly to our surveillance team. We'll have agents positioned throughout your building, and the moment Garrett tries to frame you, we'll move in." I stared at the tiny device, realizing that my life was about to change in ways I couldn't even imagine. What if something goes wrong? What if he actually convinces everyone that I'm the one who's been stealing? Caroline reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Raven, you've helped us build the most comprehensive fraud case in the history of this state. We have records of every transaction, every fake patient, every criminal contact in Garrett's network. There is absolutely no way he can frame you for crimes we can prove he committed." But as I drove home that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was walking into a trap. Tomorrow would determine whether I emerged as the hero who brought down a criminal network, or as the scapegoat who took the blame for $15 million in theft. The next morning, I arrived at work with Caroline's transmitter hidden in my ear, and my heart hammering so hard I was sure everyone could hear it. But I had no idea that Garrett's plan to destroy me would actually become the final piece needed to destroy him instead. The moment he started screaming about that $15 million lawsuit, I knew exactly what Caroline had meant about letting him make his move first. And I also knew that in about 30 seconds, Garrett's entire world was about to collapse in the most spectacular way possible. The elevator doors opened and Caroline stepped out, followed by Paul and 3 other agents I'd never seen before. But Caroline wasn't wearing the casual clothes I was used to seeing her in. She was dressed in a formal business suit with a badge prominently displayed on her jacket. "Good morning, everyone," she announced to the entire office. "I'm Special Agent Caroline Morrison with the State Insurance Fraud Investigation Division. We're here to execute several warrants related to an ongoing investigation." Garrett's face went through a series of transformations that would have been funny if the situation weren't so serious. First confusion, then recognition as he realized who Caroline was, then absolute terror as he understood what was happening. "Wait," he stammered, still holding the folder he'd been waving around minutes earlier. "There's been some mistake. I'm the one who discovered the fraud. Raven is the one you want. I have proof right here that she's been stealing millions." Paul stepped forward and took the folder from Garrett's hands. He opened it and glanced through the papers inside, then looked up with an expression of professional amusement. "These are very interesting," he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "These appear to be fabricated documents designed to implicate Miss Raven in crimes that our investigation has determined were committed by you, Mr. Garrett." "That's impossible," Garrett protested. "I've been tracking her activities for months. She's been processing fake claims, working with corrupt medical facilities, stealing money from insurance companies." Caroline walked over to stand next to my desk. "Mr. Garrett, we've been monitoring every computer in this office for the past 3 months. We have complete records of every transaction, every file access, every communication. Would you like to know what our investigation revealed?" The entire office was listening now. Everyone gathered around like we were performing some kind of play. Melody from accounting had actually pulled up a chair to get a better view. "We discovered that over the past 2 years, someone in this office has been running a sophisticated medical billing fraud operation," Caroline continued. "This person created fake patient accounts, established relationships with corrupt medical facilities, and processed fraudulent insurance claims totaling approximately $15 million. Garrett opened his mouth to speak, but Caroline held up her hand. "We also discovered that this same person has been extremely paranoid about getting caught, which led them to create detailed backup files of every criminal transaction they processed. Files that they stored on their work computer, thinking they were protecting themselves from their criminal associates." Paul pulled out a tablet and began reading from it. "Vincent Patterson, fake patient cardiac surgery, billing $43,000. Created by user account G. Morrison on February 15th at 2:47 a.m. Garrett's face went white. "Jennifer Walsh, fake patient, cancer treatment, billing $68,000. Created by user account G. Morrison on February 22nd at 11:15 p.m. "That's not possible," Garrett whispered. "Michael Torres, fake patient, kidney surgery, billing $92,000. Created by user account G. Morrison on March 3rd at 1:33 a.m. Paul looked up from his tablet. "Should I keep going? Because we have records of over 300 fake patients, all created by your user account, all processed outside of normal business hours when you thought nobody would notice." But Caroline wasn't finished with him yet. "Here's what makes this case particularly interesting," she said, walking closer to Garrett. "About 4 months ago, we received a tip from someone in this office who had noticed suspicious billing patterns. This person was concerned that their workplace might be involved in insurance fraud." She gestured toward me. "That person was Raven. She contacted our investigation division because she suspected her supervisor was stealing money from insurance companies. The room was so quiet I could hear the air conditioning cycling on, so we offered Raven a position as an undercover investigator. For the past 3 months, she's been working as our inside operative, tracking every fraudulent transaction you processed, and feeding that information directly to our investigation team." Garrett stared at me like he was seeing a ghost. "But here's the truly beautiful part of this operation," Caroline continued, and I could hear the satisfaction in her voice. "Raven didn't just help us track your crimes, she helped us reverse them." "What do you mean, reverse them?" someone from accounting called out. Caroline smiled. "Every time Garrett thought he was stealing money from insurance overpayments, that money was actually being redirected into a victim compensation fund managed by our division. He spent months working overtime, processing fraudulent claims, thinking he was building a secret fortune." She paused for effect. "In reality, every dollar he stole was immediately transferred to an account that will be used to compensate the people whose identities he used for his fake patients. Garrett has spent the last 3 months working harder than he's ever worked in his life to fund his own victims' recovery accounts." The laughter that rippled through the office was probably inappropriate given the seriousness of the situation, but I couldn't blame my coworkers for finding some humor in Garrett's complete humiliation. The car he bought last month, Caroline added, purchased with state funds as part of our sting operation. The expensive watches, the new clothes, the fancy dinners he's been bragging about, all paid for with money that belongs to the state of state name, and all of it has been tracked and will be recovered. Garrett finally found his voice. But the lawsuit, he said desperately. I have proof that Raven was working with criminal medical facilities. I have phone records, financial transactions. Paul held up the folder Garrett had been waving around earlier. You mean these fabricated documents that you spent all last night creating? The ones that our monitoring software watched you produce in real time? He opened the folder and pulled out several sheets of paper. Fake phone records, showing calls between Raven and medical facilities she's never contacted. Fabricated financial statements, suggesting she received payments from accounts that don't exist. Forged emails that our technical team can prove were created on your computer using your login credentials. Caroline stepped closer to Garrett. Your plan was to frame Raven for your crimes, file a fake lawsuit to make yourself look like a whistleblower, then disappear with the money you thought you'd hidden in various accounts. But every account you opened, every transaction you made, every criminal contact you established, we were watching all of it. This is impossible, Garrett said, but his voice had no conviction left in it. No, Garrett, this is justice. 2 agents moved behind him and began the arrest process. But Caroline wasn't done talking. Ladies and gentlemen, she announced to the entire office, I want you to understand what Raven accomplished here. She didn't just help us catch one criminal. She helped us dismantle an entire network of medical billing fraud that was operating across 3 counties. She pulled out her own tablet and began reading. Based on the information Raven provided and the evidence we gathered during this operation, we executed simultaneous arrests this morning at 14 different locations, 12 corrupt medical facilities, 2 fake clinic operations, and over 30 individuals involved in systematic insurance fraud. The office erupted in applause, but Caroline held up her hand for silence. The total recovery amount will exceed $15 million, all of which will be returned to insurance companies and used to compensate victims of identity theft. This is the largest medical billing fraud bust in our state's history. As they led Garrett toward the elevator, he looked back at me one more time. How long? He asked quietly. How long were you working against me? I thought about all the nights I'd spent transmitting his criminal activities to Caroline's team, all the fake patients whose accounts I'd helped track, all the stolen money I'd helped redirect to victim compensation funds. From the moment you told me to stop asking questions about obvious fraud, I said. From the second you made it clear that you wanted me to ignore crimes that hurt sick people. The elevator doors closed, and Garrett was gone. Caroline walked over to my desk and shook my hand. Raven, what you accomplished here goes far beyond what we initially hoped for. You didn't just help us catch a criminal, you helped us restore money to people who desperately needed it. She gestured to the folder of fabricated documents Garrett had tried to use against me. And the fact that he tried to frame you with obviously fake materials just added additional charges to his case. Obstruction of justice, filing false reports, attempted fraud against a federal investigator. How long will he be in prison? With the amount of money involved and the scope of the operation, 25 to 30 years minimum. He'll be an old man before he sees freedom again. Paul appeared beside us with a final piece of information that made everything perfect. The network analysis is complete, he told Caroline. Garrett kept such detailed records of his criminal operation that we've been able to identify and freeze assets belonging to all of his associates. Full recovery of stolen funds plus interest penalties. He looked at me with genuine respect. Raven, criminals usually try to cover their tracks, but Garrett's paranoia about his criminal partners led him to document everything so thoroughly that he basically wrote our entire case for us. As the investigation team packed up their equipment and prepared to leave, Caroline handed me a business card, a real one this time, not the prop I'd used during Garrett's arrest. We'd like to offer you a permanent position with our fraud investigation division, she said. What you've demonstrated here, the patience, the intelligence, the courage to do what's right even when it's dangerous, those are exactly the qualities we need. I looked around the office where I'd spent months living a double life, where I'd watched Garrett steal millions of dollars while thinking he was smarter than everyone else, where I'd learned that sometimes the best revenge is simply letting criminals destroy themselves with their own greed. When do I start? As I walked out of that building for the last time, I realized that the woman who'd been too trusting, too naive, too willing to believe that people in authority positions had earned their power through merit, that woman was gone forever. In her place was someone who understood that real justice sometimes requires patience, planning, and the willingness to let bad people think they're winning right up until the moment they lose everything. If this story of ultimate workplace justice got your heart racing, smash that like button and subscribe for more incredible true stories of people who refuse to let criminals get away with their crimes. Drop a comment and tell me, what would you have done in Raven's situation? Because sometimes the best revenge is simply giving people exactly what they deserve.